Professor Snanda Gupta from India. Nice to
Hello.
see you. Nice to see it here. And it's a big honor. It's a big honor to present you. Professor Snanda Gupta is emeritus professor at Gitanjali Medical College, Udaipur, founder president of the Association of Obstetric Anesthesiologists of India, advisor and executive member of the Obstetric Anesthesia Society of Asia and Oceania, and a long-standing contributor to international obstetric anesthesia education and publishing. And her lecture today is entitled Management of the Difficult Obstetric Airways, What's New, a Very Common and Dangerous Problem. Thank you very much again.
A good day to all the delegates. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, very nice.
So thank you very much to the organizers for having given me this opportunity to interact with this august audience. So today we are going to talk about management of the difficult obstetric airway and what is new there. So as you all know, difficult and failed tracheal intubation in obstetric patients is a well-known problem with potentially devastating consequences. Now, fortunately, the incidence of mortality following failed intubation in the participant is declining. And this is attributed to increasing use of regional anesthesia, improved airway assessment and preparedness, better clinical and simulation training, availability of advanced equipments like video laryngoscopes, supraglottic airway devices, and
Now we have
I bring to you greetings from my Gitanjali Medical College and Hospital, where I work as Emeritus Professor. And I have no disclosures related to this presentation. And a quick overview of what to expect in the next 20 minutes or so. Why are obstetric patients vulnerable for failed airway and difficult intubation? We'll look at some of the newer techniques of airway assessment, the newer guidelines, and then I'll wind up with pearls in airway management. So if you look at this slide, the incidence of difficult airway is 0.45 to 5.7%, while those in the general surgical population is around 5.8%. Not much of a difference, but then there are devastating consequences in the pregnant woman if she has a difficult and a failed airway. Now, failed airway incidence is 0.18 and 0.56%, while the incidence of difficult intubation for many years has stagnated 1 in 250 to 300. Some of the reports do say 1 in 224, but you can imagine this the high incidence of difficult intubation makes it very important that we have newer guidelines every 4 to 5 years. So the unique anatomical and physiological changes of pregnancy, especially the increase in functional residual capacity and the decrease in functional residual capacity and the increase in requirements by the maternal fetal unit of oxygen, that makes the physiological changes of pregnancy really devastating for the airway. There is increasing awareness of the contribution of situational and human factors. There is a stress in the operating theater for caring for two lives. There is extreme emergency, urgency, and the obstetrician is breathing down your neck. So the whole atmosphere is emotionally charged. And that is one of the major reasons why we face difficult airways. Environmental issues, most of the time the ORs are far away from the general surgical OTs. Equipment availability is at a premium, and if you want to call a senior anesthesiologist, they are far away from your obstetric OTs. And then, of course, emergencies always occur at odd hours. There are many system issues. The incidence of obstetric general anesthesia has reduced to 6% from nearly 35% in the 80s. And so our trainees are less skilled. Even the European time, the time has reduced for our trainees. So there is lack of training both in technical as well as non-technical skills. So these are some factors which are contributing towards a difficult airway. So let us look at what is new and what are the core changes. I'll expand on them as we go along. So we talk about the Indian guidelines, which have just come about 3 or 4 months back in 25, and it has become a circular versus a linear algorithm. There is more use of universal video laryngoscopy and also the second generation supraglottic airway devices, continuous intermittent per oxygenation and stress on code D initiative, along with highlighting the number of attempts that you can have for difficult intubation and difficult supraglottic airway devices, the stress on focus both for mapping the gastric fluid as well as the cricothyroid membrane, and then lowering the threshold to release your cricoid pressure, then surgical front of neck access in case of failed intubations, and getting ready with a plan A to do D in the preoperative period, and then laying stress on safe extubation and the human factors which are central to these guidelines. So these were the guidelines which came in 2015, the Obstetric Anesthesia Association guidelines, then the difficult DAS guidelines, and also the All India Difficult Airway guidelines in 2016. Now these were updated recently. In 2025, DAS came up with its own guidelines, and Mushambi and a team came up with updates on the 2015 guidelines in 2020, and in 2025, the All India Difficult Airway Association came with unanticipated difficult airway in obstetrics specific guidelines. So I'll be highlighting these guidelines which have just come up. So I have broken it up into 3 parts, and we'll be discussing them equally there. So this is a circular algorithm, and this has gone away from the rigid steps that you follow, because there is no hierarchy again here, and you can interchange between the 3 devices here. So every time you intubate with a different device, you should re-optimize the position, ensure there is good neuromuscular block, and limit the device attempts. With tracheal intubation, only maximum 2 attempts are allowed, and one of them should be with the help of an experienced operator. But ensure that your SpO2 is always more than 95%. With supraglottic airway device, maximum 2 attempts. With face mask ventilation, 3 failed attempts are allowed. But remember, whenever you do a face mask ventilation in these patients, give gentle positive pressure with an APL valve which is kept at less than or equal to 20 centimeters of water. The threshold to release the cricoid forces is reduced in these patients. So, and it is important that your assistant from the airway team keeps track of the time that has passed and also looks at the SpO2. Now, whenever there is a failed intubation, a code D should be activated. So before you start any procedure, you need to answer these key questions. And these key questions are, will I be able to mask ventilate? Can I perform a laryngoscopy? Can I intubate or introduce a supraglottic airway device? Is there an aspiration risk? Can I securely intubate the patient awake? Can I access the cricothyroid membrane? And how will my airway behave at extubation? These are important questions each and everyone should ask ourselves. So an airway assessment for the obstetric patient is really important, mainstream of the overall plan for anesthesia. And you can even train your obstetricians to do just 3 simple tests like the incisor distance, the thyromental distance, and keeping a finger at the TMJ joint, just one finger, tip of the finger. So antenatal anesthesia consultation will become much easier if we know in an emergency that this is going to be a difficult airway. The Cochrane database in 2018 highlighted that it is the potential high rate of false negatives which are disastrous for us during induction of anesthesia. We will expand on it later. So POCUS has become one of the central points, changes that have occurred in the guidelines. Qualitative assessment with the PERLAS grading scale, and assessing the gastric volume and aspiration risk with the quantitative assessment, where a high aspiration risk gastric antral surface area 3.8 square centimeter to 10.3 square centimeter, and a volume between 0.8 to 1.5 ml per kg. And this increases the aspiration risk for our mothers, and so that is why we all should be well trained for gastric POCUS. POCUS again has come up in a big way for airway assessment. Apart from airway assessment for the difficult airway, it also tells us about proper placement and depth of our endotracheal tube, and also tells us or identifies problems for us regarding why adequate ventilation is not occurring following intubation. Apart from this, early mapping of the cricothyroid membrane for cricothyroidectomy, especially in the position that you are going to do it, is very important in difficult airways. Now, briefing the airway team early on is important. You need to understand that ticking off the checklist, anesthetic as well as the WHO surgical checklist, and then making sure that your difficult airway equipment is also available out of hours. Identify an assistant who will give the required pressure, who will call the second anesthetist, who will trigger off the code D. So each member of the team should have a role assigned to them. Now, the multidisciplinary team should plan exit strategy, decision to continue or wake up, and these are important pre-operative procedural things which one should be very cautious about. Now, concept of uninterrupted oxygenation helps us to improve the safe apnea period. We used to give 3 to 5 liters of oxygen for 3 to 5 minutes per oxygenation, but now they say you increase it to 10 liters per minute for 3 to 5 minutes and ensure that your end tidal oxygen stays at more than 0.9. Now, this during intubation, when the patient is sedated and anesthetized, you can go to higher flow rates. Maybe with HFNO, you can go up to 60 liters per minute. Now, gentle face mask ventilation, like I said, with an APL valve which is set at less than 20 centimeters of water, a tight fitting mask, and a ramped position. Always remember to ensure at every step that this is available. Now, HFNO supports apneic oxygenation and reduces the work of breathing and has a number of advantages, but the most difficult problem is that in an emergency to set up an HFNO equipment is quite difficult. Cricoid pressure, we used to teach that do not release the cricoid pressure till your endotracheal tube is inside the trachea and you have inflated the cuff. But now we have gone ahead and we say it is a less dogmatic approach. Release it if you find that with mask ventilation or intubation, you are finding problems with, intubating these patients. The video laryngoscope has come up from the back to the first line practice, and in many institutes now for difficult airway, we keep it as the first line equipment. It increases the first pass success, shortens the intubation time, and since the whole team can see on the screen, so it increases the situational awareness also. But what is important that each and every person should be acclimatized to the video laryngoscope that is available in your operation theater. Then rescue supraglottic airway devices at cesarean section. What are the options you need to consider? So the advantage is that if you put in a wide bore second generation supraglottic airway device, this helps in, using it as a conduit for tracheal intubation. with a fiber optic endoscope. The wide second generation ones are Ambu or again AirQ, iGel, LMA protector. And if the endotracheal tube is failed, it provides high first attempt success rate, good ventilatory seal, and with the gastric drainage, you also get good aspiration protection. Now remember, only 2 attempts at intubation with the supraglottic airway is allowed, and +1 if you are intubating with the fiber optic endoscope through the supraglottic airway. The second part of this infographic, you need to confirm the tracheal placement by sustained waveform capnography. 4 important points or criteria which must be met. The level rises during exhalation and falls during inspiration. There is a consistent increasing amplitude over 7 breaths, and the peak is 7.5 millimeter mercury above the baseline, and of course it should correlate with your clinical acumen. So supposing your endotracheal tube has failed, you have put in an SGA and you find that the leak is audible, you can consider intubation with the SGA, with the fiber optic endoscope. Supposing the leak is absent or acceptable, you do not have to intubate, but you just continue with the supraglottic airway. Now, supposing even your supraglottic airway device has failed and you have to ventilate with the face mask, then in that case, continue anesthesia, maintaining the cricoid force if your spontaneous breathing is satisfactory. If you find your spontaneous breathing is not satisfactory, please give an additional dose of your neuromuscular blocking agent. But you can continue the whole cesarean section with this face mask, provided you are keeping your cricoid pressure on. Now, supposing all these devices fail, you are unsuccessful, you need to declare a complete ventilation failure. Please, early on, trigger the code D, call for additional help. Apart from that code D, which you triggered earlier, call in additional help. Do an emergency surgical cricothyroidotomy, call someone who is really specialist at it. And if cardiac arrest occurs, do a resuscitative hysterotomy within 4 minutes. Now, the post-procedure
Dear colleagues, I can see some technical issues with presentation. Could you proceed? Professor Gupta? Do you copy?
Dear Professor Gupta, please go once again into air.
Let a couple minutes to get back. I can see Professor Gupta in the air. Professor Gupta,
please press the button.
Do you hear?
Go on air. It's above your presentation. Now I've sent you also the invitation to go on air.
Is that fine?
Yes.
You can see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
God bless, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. Yeah. So we need to declare a complete ventilation failure, and you need to be beware of the 5 Fs. Failed laryngoscopy, failed intubation, failed oxygenation, fetal hypoxia, and fatality. It's like the snowball effect where you keep on, it rolls down and collects snow and splat, there is a fatality. So early on, prepare for your assistant should prepare for the surgical scalp technique. Now, safe extubation is as important as intubation there, and the at-risk airways can be described by this mnemonic. You stratify the risk to the 3Ds. Is it because of distortion? Was it already a difficult extubation? Was it because of some comorbid condition? You need to call in expert help at this time and keep the airway cart ready. And remember, during the whole procedure of peri-extubation, keep oxygenation on. And once you extubate, evaluate the patient, do you really need to send the patient to a high dependency unit? So remember, at this time, you must have noticed there are multiple distractions. There's noise in the operation theater. The theater team is packing and they're getting ready for the second case. So be careful. You have to concentrate on your safe extubation. So the post-procedure plan would require maybe for airway edema, if post-extubation edema occurs, you may want to treat it with racemic epinephrine or your corticosteroids. Keep monitoring for your complications, and then it's important, counsel your patient and also the attendants around about maybe post-extubation complications which occur. So you have to send them to the high dependency unit if you have any suspicion of such events to occur. Now, do not forget the physiologically difficult airway. A patient can have an anatomically normal airway, but a physiologically difficult airway because of hypoxemia, hypotension, right ventricular dysfunction, or metabolic acidosis can occur. And even in specific population like obesity, obstetric sleep apnea, or pregnancy, or these patient population, you can find a physiologically difficult airway, which, if not optimized in time, can lead to high risk of cardiovascular collapse or arrest if you try to intubate these patients without optimizing them. So evaluate these patients with a Makocha score team system or a Heaven criteria. And the All India Difficult Airway Guidelines came up especially with an infographic which shows how these physiologically compromised airways should be optimized, like hypoxia, hypovolemia, metabolic acidosis, right ventricular dysfunction. And remember, parturients who have accelerated hypertension, preeclampsia, eclampsia, etc., they are more prone to the risk of intracranial hemorrhage, myocardial infarction, pulmonary edema, and placental abruption. So be careful when intubating them. Always pharmacologically suppress the laryngosympathetic response so that you do not push them towards a high stakes situation. So physiologically difficult airway, remember, it can also occur with your anatomically difficult airway. Now, the team early on, the multidisciplinary team should decide on whether to waken the patient or proceed with the surgery. So there are different parameters which tell us on what basis you need to awaken the patient. At the end of this dark tunnel where you really cannot 100% say that this is going to be a difficult airway, we have some light at the end of the tunnel with the artificial intelligence and deep machine learning which has come up. There are a number of articles in the last 5 years, and I hope once it becomes universally available, maybe the issue of difficult airway will disappear. So in the last, pitfalls in management of a difficult airway. So remember, poor preparation, failing to recognize a difficult airway, calling for poor team, multiple attempts at intubation, overlooking the human factors. Remember, the science of human factors and ergonomics is really central to airway management. And each transition from each device should be clearly declared to the whole team and should trigger appropriate help. Now, human factors and team performance under stress. This is what is important. So all individuals who are involved in the airway management should have even good training for capnography interpretation. So it is always a teamwork, and you need to understand how this team should work, because solitarily difficult airway does not require technical expertise. It is always along with the human factors that it will provide you expert, um, airway success. So in the end, obstetric airway pearls, early planning with the multidisciplinary team, using video laryngoscopy as the first line, early rescue with the second generation supraglottic airway device, release of cricoid pressure whenever you face difficulty in introducing your device, continuous uninterrupted supply of oxygen will help you tide over the safe apnea period, and early surgical front of neck access with surgical cricothyrotomy, cautious extubation and deciding when to send the patient to the high dependency unit. Human factors are central to all the guidelines which have come up, and counseling these patients and documentation. If you have a difficult airway registry, please document it there and also on the bedhead ticket. So with these pearls, I am sure you will be able to tide over the crisis which occurs with a difficult airway. So remember, failing to prepare is preparing to fail, according to Benjamin Franklin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gupta.